All right, thanks, Amanda. Yeah, round two. All right. Welcome, everyone, all you brave souls. We're going to look at a topic which I've come to really love. It's called When Our Souls Dream. And look at that, part B. This is already the fifth part. And it's basically just an arbitrary sort of selecting 10 artists, 10 black artists who have made a significant impact on the cultural scene, members of the Caribbean and African diaspora. And yeah, I hope you really enjoy it as much as I enjoyed putting it together. And we'll move chronologically, starting with the earliest artist. I think I've included this artist before in previous When Our Souls Dream editions. Does anyone know who this is? This is a very little known artist, but has been getting quite a bit more attention in recent days. This is an artist by the name of Edmonia Lewis, and her dates are 1844 to 1907. And her story is absolutely phenomenal. In fact, I think this is the great biopic yet to be made in American cinema. Once you start hearing and researching and hearing about her life path, it is the most astounding story, I think, that can ever be told. It talks about the greatest heights of American art to some of the most, the lowest lows that can happen to a person, including near-death experience. And Edmonia was born, and here's another thing, she was born on the 4th of July, the great American story here. She was born in a place called Greenbush, which is opposite the Hudson River across from Albany, New York, upstate New York. And she was born in 1844 to an African-American father of Haitian descent and a Mississauga Ojibwe mother. From an early age, however, she was orphaned. Her and her siblings were orphaned, and they were taken in by on their mother's side, their aunts, and were raised by her aunts, her and her brother. And they participated in a nomadic lifestyle, traveling from city to city, selling things like moccasins and embroidered fabrics and other types of wares to tourists from everywhere from Niagara Falls, Toronto, and Buffalo. And when she was a little bit older, at college age, she entered Oberlin College, and that's in Ohio, in the year 1859, and she was financed. Her early education was financed by her brother. And her education at Oberlin ended abruptly in 1863. Now, these are very tense years, of course. The American Civil War is raging. There's a lot of tension in the United States. And she was brutally assaulted by vigilantes following her acquittal in a trial in which she was accused of poisoning 2 of her white roommates. Now, after such a violent episode in her life, she decided to become an expat, and she moved away to Europe and settled in various places, including London, Paris, and Florence, before settling in Rome, where she rented a studio in Piazza Barberini, and she also learned Italian. And here are some examples of the absolutely exquisite works that Edmonia created. She actually was born Edmonia Lewis, but she was given another name, Bagwaji Ishkode, by her aunts, her maternal aunts, which meant wildfire. I think that probably describes quite a bit about her character too, that she wouldn't be pushed around. She had a real fiery presence, and she was going to make it known. And this is one of the examples of her little miniature sculptures that she carved.
What size could that be?
Well, it's not too, I don't have an exact size, but I would say it's quite intimate. It's probably like so. This is called the Old Arrow Maker, and it was modeled in 1866. And you sort of look at it in the timelines of when she was assaulted by those vigilantes in Ohio, and you just sort of think about what she must have lived through. But the exquisite details and the capacity to carve such intricate details, and also to speak about her own indigenous heritage on her mother's side. And this is now preserved in the Marble Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art in Bentonville, Arkansas. And if you were doing a Google search back in February, Black History Month 2017, this is the Google Doodle that you would have encountered. Now, I don't think they do Google Doodles anymore. It's a shame, because it was a great way of learning more about cultural figures and artists, and you know, bringing attention to historical figures which up to this point have been relatively unknown, including Edmonia. And this is Edmonia working on something quite a bit larger than what we just saw with the Arrow Maker, the more diminutive works that she created in marble. And this is a commission piece that she's working on, which was started in 1876. And it is it's a monumental sculpture that is being chiseled out of Carrara marble. She's doing this in Italy as a resident of Rome. And this is a commission that she's doing as an American artist, as an expat artist, for a very important event in America. So if you think about the year that she's doing this, 1876, what's happening in America in 1876? That's their centennial. That's a big year. That's the 100th anniversary of the signing of the proclamation, or the Declaration of Independence. And there's a centennial exhibition that is being prepared in the City of Brotherly Love in Philadelphia. And Edmonia is invited to participate in this grand exhibition. And she is creating this monumental sculpture. And it is titled The Death of Cleopatra. And this thing is absolutely phenomenal. And it weighs in at over 3,000 pounds. And this is all created out of one block of Carrara marble. And unlike Edmonia's contemporaries, who often depicted an idealized Cleopatra merely contemplating suicide, Lewis showed the queen's death more realistically, after the asp's venom has taken hold. And at the time, this was viewed as ghastly. It was described as ghastly and as absolutely repellent by critics of the day, including William J. Clark, who had written reviews of the Centennial exhibition in Philadelphia. Despite this, the piece was first exhibited to great acclaim at the Centennial exhibition in Philadelphia in 1876. And critics raved that it was the most impressive American sculpture in the show. And here we can see some other views of that majestic repose that the queen has taken. And this is right at the moment of death. This is now located, fortunately, it's been salvaged. It has been missing for many years, for decades and decades, but now is in the Smithsonian Institute. So if you travel to Washington, D.C., you can see Cleopatra in all of her glory. Cleopatra, of course, is the legendary Egyptian queen. She's African royalty. The Queen of Egypt between 51 to 30 BCE, and is often best known for her dramatic suicide in August of 30 BCE, only at the age of 39. Allegedly from a fatal bite of a poisonous snake, an asp. And here, Edmonia Lewis portrayed Cleopatra in the moment of her death wearing her royal attire in majestic repose. And we can see on the side, there's also on either side of her throne are identical sphinxes, which alludes to the twins. She gave birth to twins and had bore 2 sons to Mark Antony. And there's also hieroglyphics that she's included here, which actually don't really mean anything. And Lewis was working at the time when neoclassicism was a popular artistic style that favored classical, biblical, and literary themes. Thus, Cleopatra was a common subject. Can anyone recall from history class why Cleopatra had committed suicide? I kind of forgot too. I had to put it into ChatGPT yesterday. Why did Cleopatra commit suicide? As it turns out, she was very much, Mark Antony was fighting against the Romans, and he had lost against the Romans, and he subsequently committed suicide. Having heard the news that her lover had committed suicide, she further took. She realized that this was the end of her dynasty. This was the end of Egypt, the Ptolemaic rule. This was an end of an epoch, and she was so despondent that she took her own life. Would somebody please think of the twins, though? Oh. Well, look at these other great details. Just, you know, these voids in the sandals, absolutely incredible. So I had mentioned that Cleopatra had been MIA for a long time, for decades and decades. And it's interesting that this 3,000-pound sculpture never made it back to Europe along with the artist. It stayed on American soil because she couldn't afford to have it shipped back to her in Rome. And it had been not long after its debut in Philadelphia, the death of Cleopatra was presumed lost for almost a century, appearing in a Chicago saloon, marking a horse's grave at a suburban racetrack, and eventually reappearing in a salvage yard in the 1980s. The sculpture was acquired by a gambler by the name of Blind John Condon, who purchased it from the saloon on Clark Street in Philadelphia to mark the grave of his racehorse. Guess what the racehorse's name was? Cleopatra. The fearful symmetry in the universe. The grave was in front of the grandstand of his Harlem racetrack. And when we're talking about Harlem, we're talking about not in New York, but in a Chicago suburb of Forest Park, where the sculpture remained until it was moved to a construction storage yard in Cicero. While at the storage yard, the death of Cleopatra sustained extensive damage at the hands of well-meaning Boy Scouts who painted and caused other damage to the sculpture. But since then, Cleopatra has been restored to her original glory. That makes me want to go to Washington and see Cleopatra. Are there any questions about?
I'm curious about, how did she learn to sculpt? Did she get training? How do you do this without venturing,
Well, I'm guessing she was a natural, yeah, by the looks of it.
It's just so amazing to think.
Mm-hmm.
This comes out of one block of marble.
There's still a lot of research yet to be done on Edmonia Lewis. It's only, as an artistic figure, she's only coming to the forefront, only quite late now. And people are only now really valuing her accomplishments as an artist, as a sculptor, and the great contributions that she left behind. But wouldn't that be an incredible biopic? Like, think about everything that she's gone through, and being the toast of Europe, and being at the forefront of cultural life in centennial celebrations. Amazing.
It's like a whole, like, against all odds kind of story.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. It's there. It's there, just waiting to be told. I could just see it now, just Edmonia. Wouldn't that be great? I don't know. If I was a filmmaker, not just a film follower. Amazing. Edmonia Lewis, Begwaji Ishkode. Moving on to the next artist. This is an artist who also is an artist who gained vast amounts of international recognition. This is an American artist of African American descent who was the first to gain international acclaim. Does anyone know who this is? This is Henry Ossawa Tanner, and his dates are 1859 to 1937. Tanner also moved to Europe to study, only not in the case of Edmonia, he moved to Paris, that being the center of painting, which was his chosen profession as a painter. And there he continued to live after being accepted into French artistic circles. And he had painted this painting. This is the Raising of Lazarus, circa 1897. And for this, he won a top award at the Paris Salon, a very rare achievement for any American artist. And later that same year, the French government had purchased the Raising of Lazarus. Upon seeing the resurrection of Lazarus, art critic Rodman Wanamaker offered to cover an all-expenses-paid trip to the Holy Land for the artist. And Wanamaker had felt that any serious painter of biblical scenes needed to see the environment firsthand, and that a painter of Tanner's caliber was well worth the investment. And Tanner quickly accepted the offer. And before the next salon opened, Tanner set forth for Palestine. This is another sublime work by Tanner. And you can see the influences that he would have been exposed to living in Europe. This reminded me of another romantic artist by the name of Caspar David Friedrich. You can see the relationship between this, particularly the fascination with the moon, which ran high amongst German romantics, who regarded the motif as an object of pious contemplation. Has anyone seen Insidious, The Red Door? It just came out in this past summer. This is a good way to introduce a painting by Tanner.
An effect used not only to create volume and definition, but also a specific unseen light source.
You can see on the screen is Tanner's most well-known composition. This is titled The Banjo Lesson. In 1893, on a short return visit to the United States, Tanner painted his most famous work, The Banjo Lesson, seen here. And it shows this very tender moment when of intergenerational, transmission of knowledge, in this case, of musical knowledge. And it's a very sensitive reinterpretation. It's instead of generalizing the black subject matter here, instead, the painting portrays a specific moment of human interaction. The two characters concentrate intently on the task before them. They seem to be obvious to the rest of the world, which enlarges the sense of real contact and cooperation. And yeah, I also love the way there's two separate lighting sources. There's an external light, and then there's also an internal light of maybe a fireplace that's glowing. And really sort of the mixing of two worlds coming together in a really beautiful and sensitive way. The next artist that we'll visit is this fella here. This is Bill Traylor, Traylor, Traylor. And he was born in 1853 and lived until 1949. And he witnessed equally the 19th and 20th centuries. And he was an African-American self-taught artist from Alabama. He was born into slavery. After being 12 years a slave, Traylor spent the majority of his life after emancipation. Does anyone know when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed? 1863. And then it came into effect for emancipation in 1865. And Traylor spent the majority of his life after emancipation as a sharecropper. It was only after 1939, following his move to Montgomery, Alabama, that Traylor began to draw at the age of 85. So there's hope for all of us. He took up a pencil and a scrap of cardboard to document his recollections and observations from growing up. And between 1939 and 1942, while working on the sidewalks of Montgomery, Traylor produced nearly 1,500 pieces of art.
And what period of years was that?
Between the war years, 39 to 42. In early 1942, Traylor made his New York debut. This was a very exciting time, particularly following on the heels of the Harlem Renaissance. We'll talk a little bit more about the Harlem Renaissance and some of the artists affiliated with that golden age of American art history. And he didn't sell much in his New York debut. And in fact, there's notably a story of Alfred Barr, who was the director of the MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art, who wanted to purchase some of Traylor's works, but he had lowballed Trailer offering just $1 or $2 for his artworks. And Trailer said, "Thanks, but no thanks. I'll hold on to my drawings." And here are some examples of some of his drawings. They look absolutely contemporary. They have such a lexicon that has a freshness and almost Picasso style. One starts thinking about also Chagall and other African-American artists such as Kara Walker and, well, Jean-Michel Basquiat as well. As a collection, Trailer's drawings depict his experiences and observations from rural and urban life in a pared down, repeated, symbolic way of using shapes and figures. His visual lexicon includes images of people, plants, animals, and local landmarks, while some pieces focus on a single animal, like a dog or a snake. Other paintings offer composed scenes of individuals gathered by a fountain or working on a farm.
So you worked in
It was mostly dry media, but when he did work with paints, it was usually gouache or watercolor. That's my understanding of Bill Trailer's oeuvre.
did you say gouache?
Gouache, yes. Gouache is a water paint. So all paints are comprised from pigments, and they're mixed with a binder. In the case of oil paints, it's linseed oil. In the case of acrylics, it's Roplex. In the case of watercolor, it's gum arabic. In the case of gouache, however, there's calcium carbonate in there and other media, which kind of gives it more of an opaque quality. So it's kind of like poster paints. Remember in primary school, we'd use those poster paints. They're really easy to wash off your hands, and they're quite readily available, and they're quite opaque, and that's because of the calcium carbonate in them.
Thank you.
And I've got a short clip here of a curator describing Trailer's interest in the world around him. Trailer presented himself both as a documentarian and as a storyteller as well. And please forgive there's a little bit of a discrepancy between the audio and the visual in this a little bit later.
Largely in pencil, he drew the people and the animals that he knew, and these first works really convey Trailer's desire to leave a record of himself and his life. Trailer also used charcoal and poster paint and some other materials. He painted mostly on pieces of used cardboard that he found around the neighborhood. These were things like candy box tops and window advertisements. Trailer really made his art at a time and in a place that was very risky for an African American with a point of view. But through abstraction, symbolism, and fable-like allegories, he addressed topics from literacy to lynching. I think that visitors to the exhibition will have a sense that this is a very important American artist, but one that maybe they haven't heard of. This story hasn't been told very widely. But these artists that maybe had softer voices are equally important in this big story of who we are as a people. And I think it's a very empowering body of work, because what Trailer did, in my mind, is he really stood up and testified that he was a person of worth, and that he had a story worth telling, and that he was worth remembering.
Yeah. So here's another composition, just fanciful, really beautiful in its pared down, realistic sense.
Did Basquiat mention him in any interviews?
I haven't seen too many Basquiat interviews. I should one of these days rewatch Radiant Child, the documentary that was created about Basquiat's life in 2010. But we'll put that on the to-do list. But doesn't it remind you of Basquiat stuff? Some of it? It's amazing. And we'll be seeing a little bit more of that later on. Moving on to the next artist. Does anyone recognize who this is? This is Augusta Savage. And she was born in Jacksonville, Florida in 1892. She's a daughter of a Methodist minister. And Augusta began making figures as a child, mostly small animals out of natural red clay of her hometown. Her father was a poor Methodist minister who strongly opposed his daughter's early interest in art. My father licked me 4 or 5 times a week, Savage once recalled, and almost whipped all of the art out of me, end quote. This was because, at the time, he believed her sculptures to be a sinful practice based upon the interpretation of graven imagery, that part in the Bible. And she persevered, and a principal of her new high school in West Palm Beach had encouraged her to pursue her career and to also teach clay in a modeling class. And this began a lifelong commitment to teaching as well as to creating art. She was also very much involved with the Harlem art scene, and I'd mentioned earlier the Harlem Renaissance, and she was very much a part of that scene and was a longtime member of the 306 group, named after the art studio at 306 West 141st Street in Harlem, where Savage exchanged techniques and ideas with other black artists. And have a look at just the mastery of Savage's work, this very sensitive, super realistic portrait of a young man. But her magnum opus, her crowning achievement, was this sculpture here. This was produced for the New York World's Fair, which was held right before the music started in 1939, right on the eve of the Second World War. Tensions are running high. Nobody knows where things are going. But the New York World's Fair is trying to be positive. And the theme of that year's World's Fair is the dawn of a new day. And it was the first exposition to be based on the future. And it allowed all visitors to take a look at the world of tomorrow. In total, 44 million people attended this expo in the 2 seasons that it ran in New York. And Savage was commissioned to create a sculpture for the New York World's Fair titled The Harp. And this work is strongly influenced by a song written in 1900 by James Weldon Johnson. It's titled Lift Every Voice and Sing. Lift Every Voice and Sing. And this is referred to as the Black African American national anthem. The harp was exhibited in the court of the Contemporary Arts Building, where it received much acclaim. The sculpture depicted a group of 12 stylized black singers in graduated heights that symbolized the strings of a harp. The sounding board was formed by the hand of God. And the kneeling young man holds a sheet of music with, and it's represented at the foot of the pedestal. Now, when Augusta Savage created this, she didn't have money to cast this in bronze. So she displayed only the plaster copy outside of the Contemporary Arts Building. After the fair closed, this sculpture was sadly destroyed. It was demolished. In total, it was 16 feet in height. It's a plaster sculpture, as I had mentioned. And how do we know of it, of its existence? Because it was the most popular piece of work at the New York World's Fair. In fact, so popular that visitors purchased postcards of it, even purchased small little replicas, desktop replicas of the harp to cherish for years to come. And here we can see the musical notes to lift every voice and sing. And it's just a beautiful work. It's sad to think that so many great works are no longer with us. But kind of like a distant star that has become extinguished, we can still sometimes see its light shine through. Does anyone have any questions about the harp or? Yes.
Do we know how it was destroyed?
Well, it would have been probably just bulldozed. I don't know. I'm not sure. It is 16 feet in height, so it's a pretty substantial piece of plaster. Yeah, it didn't. Let's just say it didn't languish like Cleopatra did, somewhere, marking the grave of a racehorse. This is the next artist that we'll be looking at. Also, very much underappreciated, very much unknown until really recent decades. This is Ellis Wilson. His dates are 1899 through to, and we know exactly when he was born, April 20th, 1899, but we're not really sure when he died exactly in early January 1977. It's a sad story, but we'll get to it in due course. Ellis Wilson was an African-American artist associated with the Harlem Renaissance. And he's considered to have been the Harlem Renaissance is considered to have been a rebirth of African-American life, arts, spanning from just after the Second World War, 1918 through to around the Depression era, in the early to mid-30s. And when we think of this, we can hear music. We think of such acts as Louis Armstrong and Duke Ellington, that of course wrote the background score for this very exciting art movement in American history. And we also think of artists such as Jacob Lawrence, Augusta Savage, who we just mentioned, Richmond Barth, and James Van Der Zee, who we'll be looking at shortly. Wilson visited Haiti in the early 1950s, and he had absorbed that country's rich culture by watching people eating local foods and listening to local vibes. Upon his return from Haiti, he said, quote, "It came to me that at a distance you see these people coming and going, and you don't see their features. They're black. They're a mass of darkness. So I started painting the faces flat." And here are some of the examples of his very rich, vibrant compositions. Very equally symbolic as well. We can see a young Caribbean man holding a couple of birds of paradise, and with this one bird perched on his shoulder. And here's another one. This is called The Procession, painted right around that time when Ellis was visiting Haiti. And this is now in the Amistad Research Center at Tulane University in New Orleans. But it was seen before a mass audience on the set of The Cosby Show. TJ, I could see you nodding your head.
I'd seen it somewhere.
And there it is, above the hearth in the Huxtable residence. And it's really interesting how they weave in Ellis's life, and how they fictionalize it in the context. And this is season 2 of the Cosby Show, and Claire is very excited. She gets home and she's very excited. She has a catalog, a Sotheby's catalog for an upcoming auction, and she states that Ellis is her great uncle, and she really wants to get the painting back because she remembers growing up with that painting, The Procession, and looking at it as a child, and this made a profound impression on her. And well, Claire's family had to sell the piece in order to pay medical bills, and it fell out of the holdings of the family. But now here's an opportunity to get the artwork back, and Claire is determined to bring it back into the family. I'm going to play. It's about 5 minutes, but I'll play excerpts from that season 2 episode of the Cosby Show. I think it's really moving, and it's really about Claire reclaiming her family heritage back. So enjoy.
Not going to leave you. Sit down.
What's the matter?
Now, somebody at work had this catalog today, right? I am thumbing through this thing at lunchtime, and I found this.
Ellis Wilson.
Yes, my great uncle.
Ellis Wilson is in this book.
Yes, this painting used to hang in my grandmother's house. Cliff, when I was a little girl, I used to spend hours looking at it. And tomorrow, it is being sold at an auction, and I want it.
Yeah, it says the price is $7,000 to $9,000, dear.
Well, yes, that's the estimated price, $7,000 to $9,000, but Cliff, I really want it.
Really?
Well, it's an auction, you know. I mean, it could go for higher.
Well, dear, I'm with you.
No, Cliff, I want to buy it by myself. See, it's been out of the family for 30 years now, and I want to be the one who gets it back.
So,
Great.
so
And I want to see it hanging right here over this fireplace.
you get it at the auction, I will hang it.
This is cool. Yeah, this is pretty nice.
All right, now look, before anybody does anything, just remember, don't
touch anything. Where's your picture?
There it is. Oh, look. I haven't seen this since I was 8 years old. The frame is different, but that's the painting. Rudy, your great-great-uncle painted this.
I like it.
I hope one day you'll be able to show it to your children.
I won't let them touch it.
Dad, mind if I look around? There are a couple of things I want to check out.
I hope they're unbelievable.
I'll let you know.
Dad, can we look around too?
Yes, please.
Just keep an eye on Rudy.
But I always have to watch her. Come on, I'll help you.
Mom, I think this is a good sign.
What?
Well, we're the only ones looking at the picture. Maybe no one else will buy it.
That's fine by me.
How did we know there wasn't a whole crowd of people before we got here?
No, I think Elvin's absolutely correct this time. And I think we should all mingle around and find out if anybody's talking about this painting.
You mean spy?
Yeah. I'll tell you what, we'll all go out and mingle. We'll meet back here at 1600 hours, all right? And the code words will be the wet dog, sighs, and the dry fire.
Right then, we'll meet back here at 1600 hours.
Hello?
Yeah, how you doing?
Hi.
Alice Wilson.
Oh, yes. Definitely.
Oh my goodness, man, what a nice painting.
By a very important artist.
Yes. But 7,000 to 9,000, that's a lot of money.
Not really. Actually, it's quite a steal.
It is?
Oh, yeah, well, just look at it. This painting shows Wilson's mastery of light. The gaunt forms, the simplicity of composition give this particular piece rhythm and emotion.
Well, I just thought it was a nice painting.
Oh, no, my friend. It's a lot more than that.
Really?
No, this is a very important work by a major artist.
Thank you.
Our next number is Lot 23, a work by Ellis Wilson.
Dear, he didn't ask for the bid.
I'd like to start the bidding at $5,000. I already have a bid of $5,000. Thank you. At $5,000 here, we'll say $6,000. $6,000 on my left now at $6,000. Say $7,000. $7,000 I have now at $7,000. Now $8,000. $8,000 over here.
You already have a penny for your couch, Tom.
I have $8,000 over here, but a lady's bid at $8,000. We'll say $9 now. At $8,000 on my left, we'll say $8,500 then. $8,500 at the back now. At $8,500 now we'll say $9. $9,000. The bid's up front. $9,500 on my left now. At $9,500. Now $10,000. $10,000 at the back. I have $10,000 first at the back of the room. Now $10,500. $10,500 on my left. I have $10,500. Who'll say 11? $11,000 in front. At $11,000 now against you, sir. At $11,000, will you say 11,500? So it's $11,000 here, then the lady in front. Sold for
All right.
Welcome home, Uncle Al.
And this is the pedal that brought you home, and it's still smoking.
I really like that episode. It points to a number of things. It works on many levels. Not only does it introduce large audiences to a relatively unknown black artist, but it also revealed that acquiring original art wasn't just reserved for white cultural elites. It demonstrates that the truth that various segments of the black community, particularly the black middle classes, have been astute art collectors and consumers of art. And I also like the message that, price is no object. They really value the inherent artistic value of this work. So so there we have Ellis Wilson. And I had mentioned that yes, we know exactly when he was born on April 20th, whatever it was. I said 1899, and died in 1977, early January, and he won several prizes for his paintings, but he never became wealthy. In the Cosby episode, we hear that his painting went for $11,000. Really, he sold the highest that he ever sold an artwork was for $300. And he died either on January 1st or January 2nd, 1977, and was buried in a pauper's grave in Potter's Field. The exact date of his death and the site of his grave are unknown. So a sad moment.
Where's the painting now?
I had mentioned earlier it was in New Orleans, in Louisiana. If there are no questions about Alice Wilson, and looking around, I don't see any. We'll move to this artist here. This is an artist whom I had the pleasure of visiting with. It happened back in 2000. I was going to the University of Western Ontario, and my advisor at the time, Sheila Butler, I drove with the Butlers to Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania hosts a biennial exhibition called the Carnegie Biennial every other year. And it was in Y2K that we traveled to whatever the 6-hour trip to Pennsylvania, where the Butlers actually were from. And on the afternoon when we arrived there, we visited Thad Mosley. And I didn't realize that I was in the midst of greatness when I was visiting with him. But as it turns out, he is a force to be reckoned with, a very prominent contemporary sculptor in the U.S. He was born in Newcastle, Pennsylvania, in 1926, and he's still alive today. Mosley served in the U.S. Navy before graduating from the University of Pittsburgh in 1950 with a double major in English and journalism. And after college, he settled in Pittsburgh and began a 40-year career with the U.S. Postal Service, which enabled him to send 6 of his children through college. And I've got a short clip of Thad speaking about his material studio practice. This clip is about 1.5 minutes.
I remember way back when I used to do these residencies. I think I was at Slippery Rock or IUP, and so this kid, I guess he was a freshman, and he says, "How do you know if you're an artist?" And I said, "You just say you're an artist, and it's up to everyone else to disprove that." I get here between around 10 o'clock, 9:30, 10 o'clock, after the school buses stop rolling, and I'm here till about 4 or 5 again, and so that's usually my day. So in the morning, if I'm feeling sort of lazy, I put on Art Blakey. I said, if Art Blakey doesn't make you want to get up and go, no one's going to make you get up. So I keep everything I make just about good, bad, and indifferent. Doesn't make any difference, because I feel if there's something, there was a thought in there somewhere that's worth preserving. And it's not just producing something, it's the activity of doing something.
So if we have a look at Pittsburgh, so here's Pittsburgh, Monongahela River, and on the other side is the Allegheny. And then if we zoom in to the center, in the downtown area of Pittsburgh, and if we drop down to street level, this is at the corner of Center Avenue and Dinwiddle in the Hill District of Pittsburgh. There we can see a public monument, a public sculpture, if you will, that is quite large. It's a 14-foot tall cedar carving right there, yeah. And this is one of the early pieces that Thad created for his hometown. and it's titled Phoenix. And it's one of Mr. Mosley's most well-known works. It sits at the corner that was set ablaze during civil rights unrest in 1968. In the late 1970s, the Urban Redevelopment Authority was trying to rebuild this area, and Thad Mosley was enlisted to create a piece of public art for the location. He wasn't getting paid for this, however. It was on a shoestring budget with no money. Sound familiar? Others had offered to supply the log for Mosley to carve. It's a cedar log, and to also landscape the small parquet to install it. But it stands still to this day on that site, and I love it. Flashback, who's that? I just love the disco moves that the kids got going there. But yeah, I kind of got a scare yesterday. I went on, because it's been over a year since I've researched anything on Mr. Mosley, and there was an article in the first thing that came up in the news feed on Thaddeus Mosley was, it seemed like they were speaking about him in the past tense. I thought it was, oh my gosh, is this an obit for Thad? But luckily, no, it was an art review, which was great. And it turned out that he was having a big solo retrospective in where was it? In LA. This is, look at this, he's 96, he's 97 now, and he's still going strong. What is it about those sculptors that they just live forever? It's great. This is called Recent Sculpture. It's an installation view at the Karma Gallery in LA. And that was earlier this summer, July to September 2023. Are there any questions about Thad Mosley? If not, we'll move to probably the most famous Black American artist. Who could it be? We talked about him a little bit earlier. Remember? Yeah. Jean-Michel Basquiat. And far from being a street kid, he was, in fact, an upper middle class private schoolboy of Haitian parentage, whose father owned a 4-story brownstone in Brooklyn and drove a Mercedes. By 1985, the peak of his career, he made the cover of the New York Times magazine, and his larger paintings were going for $25,000 in the mid-'80s in galleries, and sometimes more at auction. There's a fantastic biopic that's been made by describing this very incendiary character in American art, directed by another artist, Julian Schnabel. But look at this all-star cast. David Bowie, Dennis Hopper, Gary Oldman, Benicio is in this. Not only that, Parker Posey, Christopher Walken's in this. The chick from Hole, what's her name? Courtney Love is in this. Wow. Talk about an ensemble cast. If you haven't seen this, please go see this. This is absolutely incredible. I would say this is my very favorite film about an artist. Basquiat. And the Silver Surfer is in this as well. Very artistic movie. And Jeffrey Wright, playing the title role, was absolutely incredible. His mannerisms, the way he carries himself, the way he speaks. It's exactly like the real life Jean-Michel Basquiat. He should have been, and I don't think he was nominated, but he should have been at least nominated for Best Actor award. Luckily, he's been nominated for this year's upcoming Oscars. He's in a role in a movie called American Fiction, so hopefully he walks away with an Oscar. Jeffrey Wright, really amazing, amazing actor. Basquiat tells the story of the meteoric rise of a youthful artist, Jean-Michel Basquiat. Starting out as a street artist living in Tompkins Square, Tompkins Square Park in a cardboard box, Jean-Michel is discovered by Andy Warhol's art world and becomes a star. But success has a high price, and Basquiat pays with friendship, love, and eventually his life. And here's a pop quiz. What does Jean-Michel Basquiat have in common with Janis Joplin, Kurt Cobain, Jim Morrison, and Amy Winehouse? The 27 Club. You got it. Died at the untimely death at the age of 27. And I've got a really short clip showing how great Jeffrey Wright's acting is in this. And David Bowie makes an amazing Andy Warhol.
Here he is.
Tell him a little tighter.
Hey, Albert, hey, get a picture, man. Come on, beautiful.
Of the painters, please. Of the painters.
Oh, no, that's better.
Sir Bishop Burger, please. Thank you.
Hey, Mom.
Dad?
Jackie? Andy, you know Andy?
All right, yeah.
This is Jean-Michel. This is my wife, Jack. This is Jack. That's Esther. I'm on the back.
Are your folks here?
My dad's here with his wife, but my mom couldn't make it.
On such a special occasion? Why?
To see.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't indulge. Thank you.
That's cool. Jean-Michel. Talk to you.
Andy, want to take my picture?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. This is a screenshot from a clip. We were talking earlier about the Radiant Child. This is a documentary on Basquiat that was directed by a filmmaker, Tamara Davis, who was also his friend. So I'll play a short clip from this. I think it's really worth watching. And the other good thing that it does is that it shows a number of Jean-Michel's oeuvre and his amazing paintings in varying degrees of detail, all set against the background score of a John Lee Hooker tune. Really great. And through this, I'll also point, when you see me point at something, we will return to that and discuss the points of interest following this clip. The Radiant Child, 2010.
This image of me, wild man running, wild monkey man, whatever the fuck is it.
There's this tendency to say he's a primitive artist. But he was a kid who grew up in New York City in the 1970s and 80s. What the art world did to him reminds me of what happens at various points in Black history to Black artists. A, you become a representation for white people of all Black people, because you're the only Black person they know. The guy obviously spent a lot of time thinking about what his place in the world was and what's the place of Black people and Black men in the world. It's all in all his work over and over and over again.
I've got to wear my long white robe one of these days, one of these days.
The power of his drawing focus to Black experience he was not only revealing his own greatness, but he's pulling out his brothers and sisters too.
I'm gonna be all of my friends one of these days.
He excavated the incredibly rich history of Black people.
I'm gonna walk the holy road.
He's got an epic view of the history in his paintings. He's going back to slavery. He's going back to Robert Johnson. He's going back to Joe Louis.
Like a Native American shaman, he said in his paintings to us, I'm with you, but the history walks with me too.
I want to shake hands with my mother one of these days.
He's got a real sense of why he celebrates black kings is because the world doesn't celebrate black kings.
But I'm gonna live the life my mother lived. Well, I can meet her and shake her hand one of these days. One of these days.
And so you're a black king. And now I'm here with the quote-unquote elite of this particular world who control your value. You're beholden to this world to make you what you are. But you're always aware that how I can become cold and what am I to them? I'm just last year's thing. And I'm just last year's interesting Negro.
You might have noticed that there's some photographs of JM there, seated, almost like he's enthroned. This was a collaboration that he did with a famed photographer who was affiliated with the Harlem Renaissance. And this is his tribute to that same photographer. And this gives us a little bit of a, right here, it's Van der Zee. James Van der Zee we had mentioned earlier, so it was a long-known photographer in the Harlem Renaissance. And he had did this photo shoot with Jean-Michel on a throne with his wild hair. Just amazing, yeah. I love this one with the kitty cat on his lap. Not the cutest. But even the photographs, they have a quality like they're from the late 1920s, early 30s. It just had, James Van der Zee had that touch. At any rate, the author of these photographs had passed away the following year in 1983. But thankfully, he was able to capture these very revealing portraits of the young artist. Does anyone have any questions about Jean-Michel Basquiat or maybe James Van der Zee, the photographer of these black and white photographs? I always like to show this one. This is by Jean-Michel. He created this painting in 1982, and for every every time I do a presentation of When Our Souls Dream, I think this is the. These socks were given to me by the late CEO of the Station Gallery, Kerry King, and I've been cherishing them since 2016. Don't ask me to show the heel of them, because these are the holiest socks I own. The Red Warrior, 1982. All right. We just got two more artists that we'll look at. This is a phenomenal artist. His name's Stephen Wiltshire, British artist. And Stephen turns 50 this coming April. He's a young'un, born 1974. And he is known for his ability to draw from memory after only seeing a landscape or a cityscape just once. And his work has gained him worldwide popularity. Wiltshire can look at a subject once and then draw it with great accuracy and detail. He frequently draws entire cities from memory based on a single brief helicopter ride. In this case, we can see this is Rome. We can see St. Peter's right there. And he's done other cities from aerial shots. For example, he produced a detailed drawing of a 4 square mile radius of London after a single helicopter ride above that city. And some of these are absolutely panoramic, and these wraparound visual experiences that he creates. I mean, they're more than just drawings. They're an experience. But he's got the gift. And I've got a clip.
I'm Stephen Wiltshire. I'm an artist. I'm in New York City. New York is my favorite city.
Stephen is an artistic savant. I think drawing for Stephen is like air and water for us. He cannot live without it. I'm Stephen's sister. I'm extremely proud of him.
I'm gonna do a drawing of New York City from the memory. I feel excited. It's a beautiful city. Lots of skyscrapers. My favorite is the Empire State Building. It's a brilliant building. It was so beautiful out there, nice and sunny.
Every aspect of what he sees comes alive on paper.
So this morning I figured it out. We'll start with the Brooklyn, up to the Midtown Manhattan, all the way to Queens. Gonna start now.
I would love to be in his mind to actually see how he sees things. Stephen was mute until the age of 5, so drawing was a form of his speech. This was his language. He has a phenomenal memory and is able to memorize cityscapes, landscapes, how many windows, floors, chimneys. To watch the ink touch the paper, it's almost like fine embroidery. You can actually see it develop. I never get tired of it.
This is it, it's done now. So I feel happy and good.
Isn't that incredible?
I'm very proud of my work.
So gifted.
It's purely Stephen's own determination that he is where he is today.
Do the best you can and never stop.
Isn't that incredible? Stephen Wiltshire. Yep. All All right, one final artist that I wanted to introduce you. I was just introduced to this artist. Does anyone know whose work this is? Another drawist, if you're J Dart. This is the work of Barbara Walker. Barbara Walker, who is also a British artist. And she lives and works in Birmingham in the UK. And she is known for colossal figurative drawings and paintings, often done directly on the walls. So it's a shame some of these are done directly on the walls, so that means that they're ethereal. And they'll just be painted over, but they become embedded with the architecture of that space. And she critiques and brings forward through documentation and erasure old masters' paintings, usually from public collections, including this one here. This is Louise de Duchess of Portsmouth with an Unknown Female Attendant by Pierre Mignard, National Portrait Gallery of London. And this is the rendition that Barbara Walker creates. So she creates these embossed sort of outlines of what was once central is now a void, has been evacuated from the pictorial scene, and instead drawn in detail were black subjects that were kind of more peripheral, are now all of a sudden the prominent works of the composition. So here's the original of the female attendant who is offering rare elements like coral and a shell filled with pearls, which of course were luxury items in the day. And the black figures who mostly traveled from colonies were often made to pose or in posture alongside their captors, their European captors in paintings, and who themselves had commissioned these paintings, their presence serving as examples of European excess, as shown in Walker's drawing. This is Vanishing Point Mignard. And here's another example where she's using this Dutch master, Jan Huytens, a portrait of Margaretha van Verseren, 1668, and it's from the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. And she's some wealthy dame, and then there's at the side, the figure now is in focal view, and the tree in the background. Well, no, these ones are actually commodities. You know, you can buy these, or or museums and galleries can purchase these for their own permanent collections. I've got a short clip here before I end off. It's always nice to hear the artist talking about his or her own artistic production. And here's Barbara Walker talking about her exhibition, Vanishing Point, which was a couple of years ago in London, if I'm not mistaken.
Here we see the introduction of the new wardrobe from Vanishing Point series that I've been developing now for 5 years, which is still ongoing, still a conversation that I'm developing, which looks critically at the black subjects within Old Masters paintings, in particular public collections. As a starting point, looking at the Venetian periods, I'm very much interested in how the black figures is represented, discussed, considered, and viewed. I'm also interested in portraiture. Traditionally, portraits were commissioned by the wealthy, which set a clear message about who is important and who is not. Here you see produce this collective. I think of it as a constellation of figures coming together. It's an entourage. It's a celebration. The work is meant to be intense. It's meant to seduce you.
It really is seductive, you know, looking at these. Really great, really great draws. Barbara Walker. She was nominated last year for the top prize, the top award in British art. It's called the Turner Prize. An art historian, Eddie Chambers, calls her one of the most talented, productive, and committed artists of her generation. And that's the end of When Our Souls Dream, Part 5. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed putting it together for you this evening. And we've got some upcoming events happening at the gallery. If you enjoyed this evening's presentation, I'll be doing it all again at the Station Gallery. And I'm sure those that weren't able to make it out on this snowy evening will be able to check it out again. This was kind of a dry run for it, but what a great rehearsal. So that'll be on the final Monday of February. And, oh yes, this is the other thing we've got. So we'll be halfway through our 5-part series here in partnership with the Whitby Public Library. And so the next talk will be called Free Fallin', Art and Gravity.
Did they finally have that on the website so we could register? I hoped them when I was here about a week ago.
Hopefully by next week. We're just getting everything settled.
There you go. Yes. And one last thing. This is really cool. I got a chance to meet Michael Cherkos today for the first time. He is a graphic novelist, and he will be doing a book talk and signing at the gallery next Wednesday at 7 p.m. That's the 21st rather, of February. And this is real trailblazing stuff. I've never seen anything like this. This is a graphic novel on the famine terror that happened in Soviet Ukraine in the early 1930s. And it has such a incredibly, it's hand-drawn, and it has such an immediacy to it. Michael's drawings are, they're very emphatic, you could say. It's almost as though he's gone back in time in 90 years and has created these on the scene. So this is really worth checking out. It's a free event, and it's co-sponsored by we're partnering with the Ontario Tech. And grab one of these on the way out as a little reminder, a save the date. So we've got that. We've also got an exhibition of Michelle LaRose, abstractionist from Kingston. It's a solo retrospective of her works, starting from 1968 all the way up to the minute works. And can I do a little shameless self-promotion? I've got an exhibition in a little town called Sutton on the shores of Lake Simcoe. And I'll be doing an art talk there on the bonus day that we get this year, it being a leap year, the 29th of February. And that will be at 6:30 up in Sutton at the Georgina Art and Cultural Center. Thank you all. Class dismissed.